Welcome everyone to my Pyromancy Combat Mage guide. This is going to be a two-part guide. In the first part, which is this video, we're going to focus on examining general strategies and concepts about combat mages. I've covered this a little bit in another video, but I want to flesh out a few more concepts and at least provide a basis for the rest of the content I'm going to talk about here. The next thing we're going to discuss is tactical loadouts. So this will include things like gear, spells, stats. We're also going to talk about tactical combat pyromancy skills. And by skills, I'm talking about specific moves and abilities that you can use and within your repertoire with different weapons, different items, how to go about using those different weapons and items, and what types of strategies work and, well, don't work as well. Finally, we're going to talk about combat mage complex strategy. We're going to talk about playing mind games with your opponent. We're going to talk about the general versatility of a combat mage and just some overall strategies that you can sort of utilize how you see fit to approach certain situations. That's more or less going to be in the second part because I want to talk about those things while providing some content to better describe visually what we're going to be getting into. So probably a lot of PvP footage in that second part. Alright, so let's get started with the first bit. So combat mage general strategy. As I've discussed before, combat mages are very versatile. And because of that, you have a lot of different ways you can utilize your strategies to confuse and manipulate your opponents. And being that versatile allows you to change the flow and tempo of the battle so that it not only confuses your opponent but also provides benefits to you because you're the one controlling the tempo. Although it may seem, or you may give the impression to the enemy that they have the advantage, that is only part of you actually being in charge of the fight and changing the tempo. And that's what being a versatile combat mage gives you. That being said, it is a strategy, so there's a lot of different ways to achieve that. This Pyromancy Combat Mage is only one particular method that I use to achieve that, and I think it does it very, very well. So, let's get into some of the more details about this build, and I like to more focus on the concept of strategies rather than builds, because a build is something you develop for yourself. It is something that you feel comfortable with in using and manipulating the skills and abilities with to achieve your overall strategic objectives. So I think it's important to keep that in mind because that is more or less how I like to view this type of character creation process. It is something that's akin to what feels comfortable to you, not necessarily trying to copy a particular build or strategy. Well, not really strategy, but maybe a more tactical layout. So let's talk about some of the tactical loadouts you can use with this combat mage that can achieve that strategy. To start with, let's look at our stats. This is a level 100 character. I do know that some of you are already going to say, dude, you should be at 120. I get that, because my intelligence and faith is only 30-30. However, so far with this build that I'm using, I've had very high success rates in PvP. So I do want to get this up to intelligence and faith plus 40 and 40 just to get that extra damage. But for now, I'm kind of just leaving it at 100 for this video. So I do have 27 vigor, which will give you 1,000 HP. It's at 1,300 right now because I'm inflamed, or however you want to call it, not dead. 24 Entombment gives you 4 slots for spells. Endurance at 20, it's 112. Not a whole lot, but it gets the job done. Usually we complement this with Chloranthy Ring, so I will get into that a little bit later. Vitality, I have just enough Vitality to fashion souls my way with the Witch's gear. I think it's really cool gear, so I kind of wanted to fashion souls it up with that. Dexterity and strength requirement are the minimum requirements for the weapons we're using, and of course our intelligence and faith are 30 each. Alright, so let's get into our spells. So before we start talking about other equipment. I want to focus a little bit on spells, because as we were mentioned, as a combat mage, spells is part of our versatility. So it's important to identify what classes of spells we're using. Now, you remember I previously classified spells as either range, support, or combat. So I'm going to go do that right now. I'm going to go through some of the spells available for Pyromancy, and I want to give a demonstration of which spells I think are the most suitable for this type of combat mage character. Keep in mind that you're going to change your spells based on your character's strategy needs. So if I was doing PvP support, so like a Blue Sentinel, if I wanted to do Blue Sentinel out the ass, that's all I want to do is Blue Sentinel. So I'm just sitting at a spot getting someone to the Blue Sentinel, you know, maybe getting some farming souls or something, then you might want to configure your character with a little bit more range and support magic. So, but some of these spells do fall into that category as well. So, let's go through the list. Okay. So, first off, obviously, Fireball, Fire Orb, those are your basic spells. There is a Black Fire Orb, so if you have the need for dark magic, or if something's really resistant to the to fire, then you're definitely going to want to use the Black Fire Orb. But it doesn't have, obviously, the lava effect of the Great Chaos Fireball. And overall, generally, all of these little fireball spells are going to be mere bread and butter combat mage spells, because you can pull them out really fast. You can attack with them really fast. So, very useful to have in your inventory. I do like the Great Chaos Fire Orb better than Chaos Bed Vestiges, simply because the lava effect really, really annoys people, and I've killed several people with it. So you'll see that in some of my PvP footage, that how often I kill people with the lava effect. So I definitely recommend Great Chaos Fireball. This though is definitely higher damage, and it definitely does a lot of damage for sure. I'm going to put in here Fire Surge real quick, just to give a quick demonstration of how you can use that. Chaos Storm, I would say, I would classify this as not really as a combat spell, but more of as like a range support category. And that's because it takes so long to use this spell. It's really awesome. It blows up everything in the area, but it takes a while to pull it off. So if you're sneaking up on somebody in the middle of a fight, so say you're helping out somebody who's been invaded, you want to use this. This is a great spell to have if you're playing that type of PvP, because you can use this from behind the lines of the combat. So if there's two people are fighting, you can kind of sit behind the other dude, and it almost provides a shield, because the guy doesn't have much of a choice at that point. He either continues to attack the person you're protecting, or he backs off and avoids this spell. So it can give some breathing room for your partner. For Great Combustion, also a good combat mage spell, but it requires obviously some tactics to use, because you really want to be able to pull it out without somebody using it. I think this is a great spell to use when you're blocking attacks. I don't really use a shield for this character, but if you are using shields, this would probably be an interesting spell to throw in there. You might want to even throw in the dark version of that. I'm not sure which one's more powerful, but I think this one might be more powerful. I was using it a little bit. It does quite a lot of damage. So around 400-ish, 500-ish per hit, and for how fast you can get it out, it's pretty awesome. So you can block an attack, and then right after attack with the flame burst. I think that's really cool. Sacred Flame, I also consider a combat mage spell. It's a great way to annoy people who are rolling around you fishing for backstabs, because once you use it, it pretty much goes right towards the guy if he's within range. So it really helps a lot for that. Profane Flame, I would consider a ranged spell and a combat spell. It actually has a fixed distance. So let's give some demonstrations here for this. So with this one, you can toss it out there, and it's a fixed distance. So if you know how to judge distances, you can toss it out there without being locked onto somebody. And the burst radius is decent size. And one nice thing about it is it sends people flying. So that's really awesome. And if you lock onto somebody with this, they have to move. They either move or get hit. It's their choice. They can try to block it, and you can block it. But, you know, magic damage does to some degree, burst through shields, because not all shields block 100% of magic. So, definitely a decent spell to have out there, especially if you're against like a slow-moving opponent. I really like it to force people to move, because it's different with Great Chaos Fire Orb. Great Chaos Fire Orb, it forces people to move left or right, but not necessarily straight ahead. Okay, so if I throw this, no one's gonna run towards it. That's retarded. Okay, even if you try to roll through the spell, there's always a chance that it might actually hit you if you mistime your roll. So it's safer to roll left or right. Most people are gonna roll left or right. But say I want to create an illusion of weakness, so I'll cast this and maybe try to see if they're gonna roll towards me, and then I'll be prepared with another type of move to counterattack that. So that's something to keep in mind. That's why I like having this spell in my inventory. Now, another tactic is the Flame Surge. So you can actually go around some out of here. You can actually go dodge around real quickly and just quickly burst fire, like almost like burst fire this in people's faces, and it'll do minor damage. But the thing is, it's a small, quick range attack. Doesn't take long to get out, and you can really harass people with it and be really annoying. For me, I kind of use the whip for that, but it's definitely a spell that can fulfill that purpose if you're using other types of equipments. Let's see here. What else we got? Okay. I've tried using this, thinking that the burst radius would actually help decrease the movement of my opponents, but the burst radius is too small, so it's not really that effective, in my opinion. These are also interesting support spells. I've used them to some effect in support PvP, so in other words, as like as a sentinel. But other than that, I don't use it all that much, but it's interesting support magic. So if you were just blue sentineling up, I might throw this in there just to cause a little bit of chaos. This is obviously good if you're fighting someone with fire, but I rather just eat some berries rather than use this and have it take up a spell slot. This boosts your resistances a decent amount, but I try to stay away from buffs because I like to be ready at a moment's notice without having to worry too much about buffing myself. Power Within does increase your damage by a decent amount, but the problem is I don't think the benefits for this spell versus the amount of health it takes away are worth it. It takes away about 30% of your health over time, okay? And you can see my damage has been boosted significantly. So, but the health goes down pretty fast, and that's way too much for my liking. But if you were going for like one-shot hits with Pyromancy or with Sacred Flame, it might have been a decent spell to throw out there. But for regular PvP, I don't think the health loss is worth it. Alright, so these other dark magic spells, Black Serpent, really blows. Don't use it. It's not that great. So it takes way too long to get out. Okay, see that recovery time? That recovery time sucks. It's great that you have a little medium range homing spell, and it could be useful if you could get it out faster, but even with the Sage's Ring, the recovery time is just too long. It's definitely not an ideal spell to have for a combat mage. Maybe for like a support range spell, for like a sentinel, but I don't know. Even then I probably wouldn't choose it. There's way better options to use my spell slots for. Now keep in mind that you do have 30 faith, so you can throw some faith magic in there as well. Maybe like replenishment or something like that. You just got to make sure you're carrying a leveled up talisman, so you can use some of that. But I actually don't use any faith magic for this build. I stick specifically to damage dealing abilities. So that pretty much covers all the Pyromancy spells except for one. There's one spell out there that unfortunately I haven't been able to test because I simply just don't have it. I unfortunately picked Havel's Ring instead of getting the rock barfing ability. So I really wanted to try that ability because it seems like, from what I've watched videos on with that ability, it comes out very fast and it has an area effect and it does do some type of shockwave area effect damage and knocks people down. So I think that's really a cool ability, and I'd really like to use it, but unfortunately I don't have it, so I apologize for that. If I do end up getting it at some point, I will probably make a supplemental video to this to just see my experiences with it. Alright, so that pretty much covers classifying most of the spells. This is pretty much my standard spell repertoire right here. These 3 spells. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is I want to spend a little bit more time looking at our weapons and tactical skills with each weapon. So currently, I'm using Chaos Astora Greatsword plus 10. If you're a mage character and you're not using this weapon, like, this weapon's freaking awesome. I understand, like, maybe you don't want to carry around a greatsword, but it only weighs 8 for a greatsword. That's super light. And yeah, there is some little bit more heavy stat requirements than a mage character kind of should have, but, you know, 16 and 18 really isn't that bad. I mean, yeah, I could put that somewhere else, in my magic stats, my health, and my endurance. Endurance probably could really use it, but I think the weapon far outclasses itself in terms of damage and other types of movesets potential. So we're going to get into more of that later. Also, notice the A and A scaling, really nice. I have this on my mage build, my pure int build. This thing scales with S at level 8. That's insane. Okay, the damage for a pure int build with this weapon is just awesome. I mean, it's awesome enough as it is right now, but I tell you, it's really good. Now, I also have my right hand, the Pyromancy Flame. The reason why I have that is because I like the ability to cast magic while still being able to parry and use a supplemental offhand weapon. Okay? Now, for my offhand weapon, I'm using the Witch's Locks plus 5. It's B&B scaling, it by default infused with Twinkling Titanite, and I really like it. Really good moveset. Okay, I'm going to get into some of these movesets and strategies in a minute, after we finish the rest of these items. So I do stack the Great Swamp Ring and the Witch's Ring to get a total of around 30% damage boost. I use a Sage's Ring so I can toss spells out there real fast, and the Chlorantha Ring to supplement my low stamina. Because I mean, what is it, 112? So not very high, but it's enough to get off 3 attacks with my Greatsword. So that helps. All right. Let's talk about... Oh, also, by the way, if you don't do this, I highly recommend it. All these PvP-related items, this will help prevent any type of toxic, poison, bleeding, and then also you have these berries here. You get these berries. These help with damage resistance. Actually, when you use one of these, the damage resistance it gives is pretty significant. Let me show you real quick. Let's say, yeah, let's use... We got blue for magic? Sure. So right now, magic is 22.6. Pop one of these. Nom nom nom. 34.2. So, pretty decent. Almost, about 50% increase. Pretty nice. So if you see somebody specifically trying to harass you with a buffed weapon of sorts, I immediately chug one of these. Maybe I'll pound one mid-fight if it lasts too long. But it'll help reduce some of the damage, especially for my armor since it's weak against lightning. So I'm all out of those. I gotta get more. But the yellow bug pellets also work really good. Okay. So let's get into some movesets. So this weapon. As you can see, I got 540 attack rate. It's not super high, but it'd probably be even higher with 40 and 40 faith and int. But still, at 540 damage for a greatsword, you two-hand this thing, it does around 600 something damage. It does a lot of damage. It's really hits hard. Now, one of the nice things about this weapon is the moveset is pretty awesome. The generic attacks are pretty standard, your side sweeping attacks. Okay, which are great to get people who are trying to roll around you. Sometimes they'll roll through it, but every once in a while you'll catch them on the second swing. One of the really awesome moves for this is the rolling R1. This thing tracks like a beast, the rolling R1. If you are good at rolling through people's attacks and rolling up behind them, just roll to the side or behind them, use one of this, and he'll swing right around and hit it right in the face with this rolling R1. Super awesome attack. The other thing, sometimes you can get people off guard with it, is this charge stab. That will send people sliding across the floor. and it does a ton of damage. It just says "fuck off" written all over it. It's awesome. Highly recommend that move as well. Those are two of my bread and butter moves with this weapon. Are these overhead slashes, and you can charge up the rolling R1 actually with the R2. So you can do a really slower R2 that really slams them in the head. So pretty awesome. Now the reason why I always supplement with an offhand weapon is because it's a greatsword, and because it's slow, and because you need to be able to interrupt people's attacks quickly, and that will help you manipulate the flow of the battle by being able to change your attack tempo. So that's why I always recommend an offhand weapon instead of a shield. Now you can be really good with a shield, and that's awesome, but there's other options for this. You don't have to use the whip. Anything that is quick and can really interrupt somebody's attack would be great. You could use a club. You could use any of these smaller like one-handed weapons that are pretty decent. You can use, I had the S-stock, I was using that for a while. But I started to not really like it that much because it's so easy to parry. But with this, you can obviously stab the shit out of something that's coming towards you really quickly. Yeah, I know people are going to give me shit for this. The S-stock is such like a jabroni weapon, and people don't really like it, and they're saying to nerf it. But the reality is of the S-stock, it is very easy to parry. So that's why I actually don't use it. It's very easy to parry. If because the timing of it, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's almost the same timing for every single attack. So all you gotta do is time your parry rep decently, and you'll parry it. So, but it's great, but this I think demonstrates this strategy very well, is that because if you need to do a quick attacks with it, you can. And here's something else that's interesting. All you gotta do is hold down your two-hand button, and you'll two-hand whatever in your offhand. So once you two-hand something that's in your offhand, you can make use of all the weapon skills and abilities for that offhanded weapon. So if you're not really going shield and you're going in a format like this, which I highly recommend for a combat mage because it gives you more flexibility, definitely really helps to have a decent quick offhand weapon. Now for the, where is it here? The Witch's Locks. One of the things I like about this weapon is, first of all, people see a whip and they're like, what, really? No way. Not threatening. Okay, boy are they wrong. First of all, the range on this thing is absolutely nuts, okay? This thing has crazy range. I can outrange some of the longest greatswords barely in this game. So if you judge your distance very well, you can still stun them and get hits on them. Now the key winner for this thing are two moves. First is it's charged up its L2 attack. This thing is ridiculous. Not only does it have a ridiculous range, okay, but it hits as hard as a two-handed R2 or a two-handed R1 for the greatsword that I'm using. So that's pretty heavy hitting, okay? On top of that, it hits 3 times if they're close. 1, 2, 3. So you see those movement waves of where the weapon's going? 1, 2, 3. So if somebody's charging you, it makes a great counterattack weapon, or something that really takes them off guard. You two-hand a whip, they're like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna get in close. And you use this on them, it just fucks people up. It's awesome. The other is the rolling R1 for this is also just as awesome, and it's a great defensive tactic. So if you're rolling away from somebody, you can swing that out real quick. It'll do about 150 damage, maybe, something like that. It's pretty nasty, like, to keep stinging people with that, and it gives them second thoughts about attacking you. Another way to change things up and adjust your combat rhythm to what suits you and take control of the fight. So those are my weapon choices that I use, and I really like this setup, and I win most of my fights with this setup. I want to say around 80% of my battles I win with this setup. Sometimes I lose fights to weapons I'm just not experienced playing against. The Farron Greatsword, for example, I just suck against for some reason. I'm better than I used to be, but I just haven't figured out. I know you can parry it pretty easily, but I just haven't figured out the parry timing for that yet. Speaking of parries, get yourself one of these. Parry dagger, pretty sweet. If you don't really like this, you can always use a small shield, so you can block some damage with as well, but I really like the parry dagger. Now, the parry dagger supposedly has the most amount of parry frames available to parry an attack. but the timing is a little bit different than that of shields. You parry on the second part of the animation, so right when he twists his wrists and pushes looks like he's about to catch a blade and push it to the side, that's your parry animation right there. So the part where he clenches his fist and brings his arm close to his chest, that's actually more of like a charge up animation. So it doesn't actually parry anything at that point. It's the second animation that parries. So it requires a degree of practice to get the timing down right. I still haven't mastered it very well yet. I need a lot more practice with it. But it definitely comes in handy when you got those guys spamming the S-stock or stupid other shit that just annoys you. You just want to stop the spamming right then and there. That's a great way to do it. Especially even just throwing it out there, you know, just makes people think twice about doing that. So that's pretty much some of the skills for the weapons I've got. Again, light and fast weapon for your offhand is preferred, and maybe something with a decent attack that you really like or enjoy using. I definitely can recommend that. And let's see, we already covered some of the items. So let's get into some tactical skills with our spells and just combat strategy in general. So one of the things you're going to want to focus on when you're using spells in combat is, first of all, locking on and not locking on. Obviously, we all know somebody locks on, the spell's going to go right to them, and they're going to frickin' get out of the way, more or less. Sometimes they don't. A good way to lock onto somebody and still get a hit in is when they're running away from you. If you switch and throw a Great Chaos Fireball and they're rolling directly away from you, you will probably hit them with it and do a lot of damage. So keep that in mind. But you're going to have to learn to manually aim your Great Chaos Fireball, and it will come in to play a lot. So what I do, I try to program myself to do this subconsciously. So you see how I have almost like a diamond-shaped plate on the back of my neck? That's, for me, that is my general vertical target right there. So pretty much wherever I have that aimed is pretty much where the fireball is going to go. Okay, at least vertically. All right, so it's about that same vertical height and slightly to the right. Okay, so for medium range, that's what I generally use to adjust to give me some type of conceptualization of where the general vertical area is that my magic's going to go. Then the rest of it is just experience with the horizontal moves. So what I recommend doing is practicing with this. Just try aiming slightly to the left or to the right of where you think your opponent's going to be, and you want to aim it while you're charging up the attack. So right here is when you want to aim it. So you see, just slightly to the left, slightly to the right. You want to get good at doing that. You also want to get good at throwing it slightly in front of you as well. So one thing I'll do is somebody's chasing me, I'll roll, throw it in the ground. Okay, sometimes they run into it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I'll roll away and throw it right in front of me like this. There's a lot of different ways you can use this tactic, but once you get good at it, it definitely becomes something to be reckoned with, being able to do that. And using this as a movement tool definitely helps. So you can use this as a movement tool, quickly switch out your abilities, and try to get people to come towards you so you can hit them with a fireball or hit them to the left or to the right. It gives you a lot of options and flexibility. And then of course this move. Obviously everyone knows getting hit with this sucks a lot of ass. It pretty much destroys your health and will almost one-shot you. So it's very dangerous ability. So when do you use it? Pretty much when you're point blank range with somebody and you're doing a lot of rolling. Okay, if you're doing a lot of rolling around and dodging attacks, sometimes that's a great time to pull it out, because if he's rolling around you trying to get in a good position, okay, you can use this and it'll really auto track to pretty much wherever he is. And if it just hits well, you'll grab him and that'll be it. It's game over for that dude. Even if he has a little bit of health left, all you have to do, whip out your whip and play cautiously. Dodge around, give him a quick tap, and he's done. Okay, so it's definitely a good move to have, even if it's just having it out there for the whole threat aspect. once someone sees you use it, they're going to be like, shit. You know, they might think twice about rolling around fishing for that backstab, and that's what you want. Remember, versatility is the name of the game with combat mages. Okay, using your moves to trick your opponent, to change the flow of the battle for your benefit. Constantly be thinking about that, okay? Because that's what's going to make you win. Builds don't let you win. The skilled players out there know how to use what they like to benefit their strategies. So you need to develop your own builds that fit how you want to approach a particular strategy. That's the goal. That's the key aspect here. So just because I'm setting my guy up like this doesn't mean you have to do this. But it definitely, for me, it works out very well when I'm trying to use a versatile Pyromancy combat mage type character. Alright, so I think we've covered pretty much all the general aspects of this build. So I'm going to roll into some PvP footage right now, and we're going to do some more discussion on combat tactics, mind games, little tricks I use when I fight in PvP that you can use, and things that maybe you might not really think about. So that'll take place in part 2. So please go. I think I'm going to make the part 2 a separate video, simply because I think this might be pretty long, but we'll see. Alright, thank you everybody.